No Jumper, coolest podcast in the world. Today we have my old friend and jack of many trades, Greg Walsh, on the podcast. How you doing, Greg?
Good, man. Thank you very much.
Nice to see you. It's been many years. We know each other through the BMX industry, but you have a wide arrangement of things that you are knowledgeable about, and I guess firstly is just the whole thing of fitness in general. So I remember the last time that we hung out might have been at Interbike, like a million years ago, like 8 years ago.
Maybe 08.
Yeah, something like that.
A while ago, yeah, for sure.
And I was sort of in a weird position at that time because that was when I had gotten really fat. I'm about like 220 now. I had gotten up to like 280 at one point from like injuries and stuff. And I remember meeting you and just being like, yeah, I've been like really into lifting weights and all this stuff, and I'm telling you what I'm doing. And I remember you just kind of looking at me like, yeah, like, that's cool that you went to the fucking newsstand and bought a copy of Flex, and now you're just, like, throwing chicken breasts down your throat. But I swear to God, there's something better. And that's basically what it seems like you've really kind of dedicated your life to since then, is just really having this incredible understanding of how the human body works and how to help people with injuries and how to get them in shape and stuff. So maybe you could just let us know exactly what it is that you specialize in.
Man, I remember that conversation. I don't remember looking down on you for getting bigger, and I definitely remember being stoked that you were interested in training. My guidance, especially to people that are coming from injury or BMX or things like that, is anything is better than nothing, as long as it doesn't feel stupid. A lot of times trainers will get people to do stuff that is easiest for them, not necessarily best for the client. And as everyone well knows, fitness can be a giant disaster of trickery. So when I started realizing that I was injured, and if I didn't unwind it, I was just going to keep getting injured.
And your injuries were mostly BMX related, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
everybody knows BMX is terrible for your body. You really thrash yourself.
It's terrible. And the more I learn about the body, the more you realize how
profoundly stupid it is to do this with your life.
I mean, just how dangerous it is, but then also how impressive it is. Also, but then also how important it is to unwind it. I was never particularly good at riding. I tried real hard and fell down a lot.
I feel you.
But the reality is that the harder you try, the more you're going to fall. And eventually it's going to cut short what you're able to do. For me, it was just things were hurting all the time to a point where, something I loved my whole life was less fun. But then when I started getting into martial arts and strength and conditioning, I was able to at least kind of reverse the process. So that was the main motivator for me. Of course, I'd never been like a fitness-minded person. I come from BMX and hardcore. You look at gym style fitness as like this nerdy thing that you want to stay as far away from as possible. So I wanted to learn as much as I could, but I also wanted to make it appealing to people that may have otherwise thrown it out.
That aren't aroused by The Biggest Loser.
Yeah, well,
image-wise.
And but that are interested in that style motivation and that style dedication. You just don't have to wear a headband and run around in your underwear or worry about a six-pack or something to be interested in high-level fitness. So I think what we have to offer that's different than anyone else is a route of understanding to feeling disenfranchised and disillusioned with fitness, but now being able to offer high level details based on a lot of experience. I got into CrossFit early on.
What year? Yeah, because you were an early adopter on that.
Huh? 2002, 2003. We were around in CrossFit Long Beach, and then we really experimented with the process. We weren't kind of married to the CrossFit protocol, but we really enjoyed the CrossFit process. So it was kind of mixed modality training for what you needed. We were grappling in kickboxing, and I was trying to recover from being injured from BMX and also still riding BMX.
How'd you get into CrossFit though? Who told you that was the way to go? And did you have any like failed attempts at getting in shape before that? Doing anything silly?
I mean, to be honest, Matt, I just really got lucky. So I've been training, karate in Long Beach, and then was looking for something different, and I really just feel the stars aligned, and I found what I feel was the best possible gym I could have ever walked into. It was very small. The guys that ran it, my trainers, were just these progress-minded dudes, and they just took me under their wing, and we just killed it until I moved back to New York. Before that, I mean, I would go to the gym knowing that if I didn't move, I would hurt worse. I don't ever necessarily remember doing anything really stupid, only because I had such a objection to that.
Right.
You know, like you could see what other people were doing that you didn't want to be anything like. So I would just get on the rowing machine, or I would just get on a bike or something like that, and just move my body so I didn't feel so banged up. But then once I started lifting kettlebells and learning about, movement and kind of like organization of movement, as boring as that sounds, I started realizing how much a smart strength and conditioning and a smart training program could help anyone. The broken down people who had been on the couch, people that had been injured from action sports, or and then the easy people to train were the great people that walked into CrossFit Long Beach already not injured,
in good shape.
That's easy. That's easy. That's plug and play. So now with Wolf Brigade, with our brand in New York, it's strength and conditioning. It's really detailed, but a class there, feels a lot different than it would anywhere else. The imagery is looks more like a band. Or
you guys
a
are listening to fucking Integrity and like Burzum and shit in the back of your fucking Instagram videos.
Well, I mean, we do that because that's my personal taste and sensibilities in music. But from a philosophical standpoint, something else that I always thought was intelligent is a lot of military and law enforcement organizations use that type of distraction technique to desensitize people to chaos.
Okay, yeah.
So something we like about how we train people, and really why we train people, is we want to insulate them for whatever,
right.
For whatever sport they're trying to play, for their lives, for this crazy fucked up world we're in, and so if they come in and it's this docile, passive environment, that's a trick. That's not how the world is.
Right.
That's not how your office is. I mean, if people are struggling with work or something like that, we've heard so often that when they come in, it's distracting, and some people, it gives them a lot of anxiety and stuff like that. And we're very nurturing, and we're not screamers in there. We're not yelling and pointing and all this kind of stuff. We're extremely high level, experienced coaches and trainers. But the environment is intentionally chaotic, and once people start desensitizing to it, it helps their ability to deal with everything. They say that, and that's like one of the best compliments is after training at Wolf Brigade, everything else feels easier.
Right.
That's perfect, man.
So a lot of people are somewhat familiar with CrossFit, but I guess for our very general audience, maybe we could explain sort of like what CrossFit smart. Is and what you do and how it's different and what sort of led you to starting your own thing.
Yeah, that's smart, man. So
we do have a lot of boneheads out there that have no idea who the fuck that you are or anything by anything.
and that's
not that they should know anything.
No,
not boneheads. You just you probably are fat and you fucking sit around smoking blunts all day. Yeah.
I also keep pretty quiet, so a lot of people probably just wouldn't have ever had a reason to come up on us. Mm-hmm. Broad strokes brush, CrossFit is a mixed modality training program that started in the early 2000s and has turned into like this giant phenom. There are great elements to it. There are questionable elements to it. I really love where it started and where it led me. I don't necessarily love where it is now. So we kind of retooled what we thought was the best parts, and then added what we thought might have been missing or able to be done a little bit better. And mostly it just errs on the side of details. We're extremely composition based as opposed to just simply completion based. If there's a training day, we want to know why and how and what, and add every detail that we can to get the most out of it that we can, as opposed to just hit the clock and go as hard as you can. Movement standards be damned. Lay on the ground, cry and scream and everything like that. That's in my opinion, not a progress-minded philosophy for a lot of people.
It's kind of become such like a sport, like the way it's progressed. I was watching this documentary about the CrossFit Games, and I mean, number one, it's really amazing the extent that they push themselves to,
it's truly
passing out and shit. But it's also just sort of a your stuff seems more pragmatic, and you're more trying to prepare people for actual life rather than like, here's your sport that you need to be good at.
Yeah, that's true. That's accurate. There's people that we train that do compete in fitness occasionally. We've got military people that compete in like military-based fitness type competitions, and people that compete in martial arts and stuff like that. And that's great. And our training program prepares them extremely well for that. But the reverse always can't be said. You know, we want to make sure that they have all the details they need to do anything they want, not just compete. So we're not necessarily training them for any specific event. The event is anything that they come up on,
right?
You know, and then the enjoyment we take out of that is we're detail people, you know, because I've had to fix myself, man. I mean, that's been kind of a game of its own. I had a back surgery in 2009 that didn't go great. So I had to fix myself after that.
Did that kind of fuck up riding for you after that? You hear that all the time.
So even before that, riding was rough. I still did it, but it was interesting because I could bunny hop, but if I pulled as hard as I could, it was bad. It was bad news.
Right.
So it was basically more just like casual, but then I had to be also really aware of position, which was also transferring to what I was thinking about with fitness. So, you know, it was an interesting correlation at that time. And then after the 2009 surgery, I was just patient with it until I couldn't handle it anymore. And I had another surgery in 2012, a fusion. So they put a little piece in there in the bottom of my back where there was a serious injury. And the actual fusion went okay, but the guy did something wrong, touched the nerve, and turned my left big toe off a little bit.
Really?
Yeah. So for someone like me that's you know, kickboxing and lifting weights and pedaling a bike, it'd fucking kill me, man. That's like a rough injury.
You're basically a mobile lower body for doing anything like
power based, right?
Yeah,
that's exactly right. So for me, I just kind of had to really work hard to make sure that I could get myself stronger again. And in that process, you just learn a ton about how to train people with any type of injury or any type of setback. More so from the mindset point of view, because ultimately it would have been super easy to just say, well, my left big toe's rough, so I'm just going to do this, and this, but not this.
Right.
And so just to jump forward a little bit, that's how I think about Wolf Brigade being able to help a lot of folks from action sports. Is it's easy to ignore something that hurts, but is I guess
manageable. Yeah. Like, I can't run.
Yeah,
you hear people say stuff like that all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I can't run, or I can't jump, or I can't do this or that. Yeah.
But realistically, I mean, if you're throwing yourself downstairs on a bike or a skateboard, if you ignore it long enough, eventually, you know, it's going to get worse. And I know for a lot of people, fitness is like this. It's like this. They shake their heads, and it's silly and stuff like that. But I mean, if you could prolong your riding career and enjoy your time more, and work with someone that isn't ingrained in like a fitness type mindset, I think we can offer that differently than anybody.
So say an average BMX rider, a skateboarder, somebody who has, you know, lower back pain, or like the most common things that you deal with. Say they come in and they basically want an analysis of the kind of stuff that you would suggest that they be doing to help get their shit together.
Yeah.
What's like the basic stuff that you find has the most results for people?
So I mean, nothing is an island. So if people's low back is injured, chances are it's because, you know, their hamstrings are really tight, their ankles are really tight, because you're just smashing yourself up all the time. And then, you know, we're also always looking at the front as well as the back. So, you know, have you ever, like, you know, pulled up real hard and felt a lot of pain in your stomach? Do you have a tiny hernia in there? Is there like a ton of abdominal weakness that's going to make your low back weak? So we would put someone coming in from that type of thing through the exact same really basic diagnostics that we would do with any brand new person, which is can you hinge at the hips? Do you understand how to like brace your stomach up for tension and power and strength? And then if they don't, then we would basically start there and make sure that they can identify what parts of their body are hurting them, so that we can help them strengthen and adjust that stuff. And there's a ton of people. There's a guy named Kelly Starrett that started a mobility project, and he has so many great suggestions on simple ways to fix yourselves that we've adopted and adapted for our specific people. And it's just totally awesome where certain aspects of the fitness industry are now as far as self-care, self-maintenance. Stuff that even 5, 6, 7 years ago was fucking
wasn't really talked about.
No. And not even, in my opinion, not even necessarily not talked about, but didn't exist.
Right.
You know, even the PTs and chiropractors and stuff that I had seen for many years prior to that never told me anything like what this guy told me for free on the internet, you know, a couple of years ago.
Kelly Starrett. I gotta look him up. He sounds interesting.
He's a high level coach and a doc, and has just put out so much phenomenal information, but and paved the way for the self study, fix at home type stuff, and some of it is really, really great.
But do you ever run into issues with people like trying to take care of their own medical issues as opposed to going to see a doctor in situations where they maybe shouldn't?
That's funny. There was a comma at the end of the sentence that I just finished. And it was going to be
okay. Yeah. Because there's all kinds of liability type stuff, I'm sure.
Ultimately, there's a ton of value to working with someone that can watch you move. It's the same thing with training on your own. I end up training on my own a lot because I'm running a lot of classes and training people and stuff. But it's really great when I don't have to train on my own because you're more accountable mentally. And then also, if you're making goofy mistakes or doing something that's not a great idea, someone can call you on it. So for people that have the opportunity to training with someone with experience that makes sense to you is great. It's important.
Right.
If you never do that, you'll never know what you're missing until you do. Right.
Right.
And even for us now, we routinely take everyone that we both train and work with and re-diagnose. No one moves perfectly all the time. We're humans. We're going to make mistakes. So yeah, there's a value to working with someone that you see. I guess executing things in a way that makes sense to you, even if you don't know anything about fitness. If it looks stupid, it's stupid.
Right.
It's pretty easy to vet that process. There's a lot of trainers out there that get paid a ton of money that just really don't know anything. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to splash some cold water on that by really letting people know how simple, but also how important it is, and how there's really just no substitute for time in the trenches.
Right.
If you've never injured yourself and had to fix yourself, then you're missing that piece of the puzzle. If you've never tried to fix someone that's coming back from an injury, mentally and physically, you're missing that piece of the puzzle. So anyway, yeah, find someone that makes sense for what you're trying to do.
Right. Would you say, because I mean, a lot of people, when they think about the overall fitness community, they're just like, there's obviously this like stain of sort of bodybuilding being the most well-known style of fitness on a mainstream level, and it's been that way since the 70s or whatever. And I think now, in particular, we're starting to see like people realizing that that's not like, even with like the UFC being so huge now, and people seeing that like, oh, like the ideal athlete, these guys who are objectively probably in some of the best shape on earth, they don't look like a giant bodybuilder guy. Yeah. So have you seen that stigma sort of going away? And do you feel like that's sort of what you're always struggling against? Because when I first got into lifting weights or wanted to take care of my body, that was the most prevalent style of fitness. So of course I was drawn to it. Like, you just go and lift weights as hard as you can and eat a shitload of protein.
Yeah.
So can you talk about like that in comparison to what you do, and like do you think people get kind of turned off to working out because the image of it is so weird?
Yeah, that's smart, man. I mean, of course everyone wants to look nice. Everyone's got a slightly different definition of that, but I think you're right. I think CrossFit did some good and bad things for body image. UFC being so prevalent has done some good and bad things for body image. But realistically, do I think bodybuilding has taken less emphasis in the last several years? Absolutely, for sure. A regular-looking person that moves well and just looks fit and strong is way more appealing to many people than it would have been 10, 12, 15 years ago.
Just from a health level too, it's just kind of like you're a 30-year-old woman and you want to go get in shape. Blasting the shit out of your biceps is not really going to do that much for you.
Yeah. Well, and we always think about it as transferable strength. What can you do? What can you do with that? What can you do with those biceps? In the deepest water, where are those biceps going to get you? And we've proven again and again, and many other people smarter than us have proven again and again that you can't be simply a specialist in a generalist world,
right?
And even guys, some of the people that we have the good fortune to work with, that are some of the heaviest lifters in the world, are great generalists. Yeah, they lift really, really heavy and they have gigantic muscles, but they do a lot of general type stuff, similar to what we do to insulate that strength.
Right.
You can't just have a bicep. You're right.
Right, because bodybuilding is, it's dangerous that it's the most well-known style of fitness or the most mainstream because of the fact that there's absolutely no emphasis on mobility. The biggest, most successful dudes in that field are guys who literally have a hard time tying their own fucking shoes.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of, it's really interesting to see somebody like you or even with the CrossFit movement of just pushing this idea of like, fitness is something you have to do on a daily basis or throughout your life, and you should focus on something that is going to help you out with your day-to-day life instead of going for some bizarre body that is really only achievable 9 times out of 10 for most people through drugs, dangerous drugs that are not talked about in the bodybuilding media, which is sort of another bizarre thing that I found when I was in that world, is like all these magazines aren't talking about the shit that all these guys are actually on.
How it all really happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, strength is a universal need, and everyone's definition of that is going to be a little bit different. But I do think the general sensibility has pulled way away from that level of aesthetic. There's always going to be a bodybuilding community, and that's great. And it's not my cup of tea, but just like anything else, if people are dedicated to it, great. It's better than sitting on the couch. But the reality of it is most people have a goal of being strong for their own reasons, and then the smartest path to that for most people is going to be some kind of general, strong-minded fitness.
I think people get kind of turned off to CrossFit and like interval training type stuff just because of the fact that in comparison to just lifting weights, it is so overwhelming and so, you have that half hour or 45 minutes or however long your workout is where you are just absolutely destroying yourself and it's so painful. And it's such a group type thing too, because it's like most people don't have it in them to do a CrossFit style workout on their own, I would think.
That's another smart point. I'll say yes and no to that. I think a lot of people like the idea of a high intensity, short training interval for good reason, but we approach it as insulating that intensity. You can't just expect someone that's never trained really hard to come in and go hard. The reason that they have to fall on the floor and that it looks like an absolute catastrophe is because very often they haven't been given the tools to push that intensity out. Or they've been given the wrong tools to execute that intensity. Mm-hmm. So something different that we do is we're expecting newer people to really put their ass on the line. It's going to be in the simplest possible way. It's going to be, pedal an Airdyne bike for 20 seconds as hard as you possibly can, mm-hmm. and then rest for 10 seconds, and then do it again. As opposed to wing a barbell over your head that you've only lifted 3 times fresh. Now you're going to do it as tired as you've ever been in your life. Without having done all the precursor training and stability work and kind of positional diagnostics to make sure that's even a good idea. Right. So that's kind of where running back to almost the beginning of the conversation where we kind of went off track with I guess CrossFit is we want to take and do as much as we can with the simple stuff. And we've found that you can really maximize performance in the high level stuff by maximizing performance in the simple stuff.
Right.
So I agree with you that a high intensity training interval is scary to some people, but part of the reason it's scary is because often the people they've talked to that have done it haven't gotten the proper pre-instruction, the proper movement diagnostics before being expected to do high level shit.
Right.
It's like throwing yourself down a handrail. You're not going to throw yourself down a handrail your third day on a bike. If you do, you're much more likely to get hurt.
No, that's essentially like the equivalent of like what a lot of not that I'm trying to throw CrossFit in general under the bus, but it seems like that is kind of what happens is that there's so many people into it that people get into it and all of a sudden they're just trying crazy shit that they probably aren't ready for, and
part of it is just the nature of the beast. It's essentially a volume model now. There are so many CrossFit affiliates that if someone opens up, they have to get clients. I mean,
right.
There's a need for people that's going to compromise quality.
Right.
It's unavoidable. We don't make that compromise.
Yeah. See, that's an interesting thing about you and the idea of you like running a gym is that you are clearly a dude who doesn't, compromise ideologically or for the sake of business. And you've always been that way, and you've always just been this very kind of guy who knows exactly what you're into. But when you look at gyms, like even when we're talking about the bodybuilding thing, I've noticed that a lot of gyms now, it's this whole thing where there's no grunting allowed in the gym, where they're really trying to create this like environment where it's very, very placated, safe for outsiders, that kind of thing. Is it tough for you to manage the day-to-day of like trying to get people into the gym as well as, managing business and what you actually believe in?
I guess yes and no. I mean, that's always going to be a struggle. What we sell is not easy. It's not easy for a reason, but it's not easy for an unsafe reason.
Mm-hmm.
You come in, you're going to get meticulous instruction. You're going to get cared for, and like I said, we're nurturing trainers. We're not coddling,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, we're more patient than most because we have more information to offer than most.
Right.
We don't have to just scream louder and turn the music up because we have other tools in our toolbox. So of course it's always tough to get people through the door to do difficult things. But once they're through the door, then I mean, with very few exceptions, they're glad they came in. Philosophically, no, it's not tough. I think often about the fact that although we have like a really kind of different look than anything else in fitness, and we approach things a little bit differently, there is no novelty to that. We're not playing loud music because we want to show off that we're playing loud music.
Mm-hmm.
We're not lifting kettlebells more than we lift barbells because we're trying to make any type of point.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of experience. I've worked really hard for that experience. I've failed a lot, as you know. I mean, in some of my other businesses and projects.
Haven't we all?
Yeah.
Try to start a mountain bike website.
We could spend an entire other hour on how I've failed and why. But philosophically, I don't feel the slightest. I don't feel the slightest bit of questioning or concern with Wolf Brigade or anything we're doing there. Because it's fact based at this point. There's no one right way to do things, but there's a shitload of wrong ways to do things, and we don't do any of those.
Right. So you're never like tempted to introduce like a part-time spin class or?
No, I mean,
I've got all kinds of ideas.
And we're also really big. Almost anything is better than nothing, people.
Right.
So as long as it's not like really, really fucking stupid, anything that gets people off the couch is great. And then there's just levels of that,
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people try CrossFit and it pushes them towards what we do.
Right.
We get a lot of people that have walked down that road, or even something like spinning. They love the intensity of it, but then they started realizing quickly that you're just not strong.
Right.
So then they wanna add to the toolbox. And then that's kind of where we fit in. That's where we're a good fit.
Right. Can we talk about Rochester? Because it's very
Sure.
interesting. Thinking back, I don't know if it's online, but I have the vivid memory in my head of your 411 BMX day in the life bio. A lot of people probably remember 411 as a skateboard magazine, or a video magazine, but they did a quick stint of like five issues of BMX content, and they were sort of like woefully just inattentively put together. Like they were just sort of whatever. But there was a cool day in the life with actually you and a few other legendary BMX riders from that era. But when you look back at that video, and that's you in your Long Beach life, what do you think, assuming you remember it? And then also what led you to move back to Rochester, which to me, I could put Rochester approximately in the category of like Siberia, with places that I would want to move at this point in comparison to LA. No offense, but I'm just interested in where you were at that point in your life and what led you back to the East Coast.
Man, trust me, none taken.
It's about to get real cold there.
Right, yeah, Rochester has definitely beaten me down more than it's built me up. That day in the life, I remember it. I don't know if this is good or bad, but I haven't really changed too much since I was probably 12 or 13 years old. We added fitness in there at some point, but I think the biggest thing, and it's funny, I just talked to him about that, is I'm definitely not a vegetarian anymore.
I did not know that. That's great to hear, actually. That's cool.
And you know that's a tough one for me. Philosophically, but realistically for me, it wasn't a give up on a project choice. I was riding BMX and training Muay Thai and grappling and just wasn't recovering ever.
Yeah.
You know, I had bruises on my shins for months, and I was like, man, I'm eating well. Magically added fish in, and truthfully, I wish I was lying. It was like I was reborn.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I was a vegetarian, almost vegan for like 3-4 years in high school. And when I stopped, I felt so much better.
Yeah, and it's kind of a to each his own thing. For some people, I think it works. For some people, it doesn't. For me, I learned that with a moderately active lifestyle, it was okay. But when I started actually getting after it, it wasn't. So the main difference between, I guess, the 411 and now would be karate turned into Thai boxing and grappling, and I'm not a vegetarian. I think I still watch the same scary movies and have a lot of the same weird stuff in my house. Rochester. So we had CrossFit Long Beach out here and integrated martial arts, and I absolutely loved it. At the time, we also had Coalition and Hell on Earth, and a pretty big commercial print shop in Rochester.
Yeah.
I tried to do as much of the business stuff as we could out there because it was just so much cheaper. Even though I was living out here, that was tough. It's not like I'm some business whiz, but it's fucking tough being far from projects like that. I was struggling out here, and decided to jump back there and see if I could help those projects out. Not sure if that was a good idea or a bad idea.
Yeah.
I moved back toward the middle of 2008, and we started Wolf Brigade soon after that. But a lot of those other projects hit some turbulence in 2009. 2009 was not my year.
In terms of Coalition and Hell on Earth as brands, or
Yeah.
in terms of being in the BMX industry especially, it's tough to not be in Southern California, huh?
Yeah, all of that.
Yeah.
Mentally, I mean, I had had some challenges. I had been injured and in pain for a long time, and it had kind of worn me out more than I would care to admit. That was definitely a factor when I went back there. There were reasons I left Rochester, and they were still present when I got back.
Yeah.
It's a wacky, toxic city in a lot of ways. So I wasn't great at navigating that when I first got back there. And now I don't give a fuck. I'm going to transcend that toxicity.
What kind of stuff? Bad relationships, gone sour, gang beef.
Mostly just negativity. From someone like me that's got to be pretty negative.
Right. Well, people being negative towards you specifically.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I've always had weird luck there.
Yeah.
Or non luck there. But so I just kind of stuck with it, and then I think the biggest blow from the move back was our commercial print shop went under. I had a handshake agreement with the dude that owned CrossFit on a website we had started together called CrossFitShirts.com, and they changed how they were running their corporate structure in a real quick way, and I guess kind of overnight all that changed. We lost a lot of revenue that was coming into the print shop, and I've never been good at strategizing business decisions like that, so we should have cut some space, fired some people, and maybe stayed in business.
Right.
We did none of those things, and it kind of put us under.
Right.
So that was a revenue stream that was helping Coalition and Hell on Earth work.
Mm-hmm.
It was employing my brother and several of our friends. So that going under was a big deal. That sucked. That was a big challenge. So at that point, I'd been training people and doing strength conditioning for I think 6 years at that point. I just decided to lock that down and just stay 100% focused on that. It was disappointing to get treated like that by someone who I really looked up to, but you got to expect that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Handshakes are handshakes, I guess.
Yeah.
Not in my world, but in a lot of people's worlds.
But so was it a sort of blessing and a curse because it really allowed you to go all in on the fitness stuff?
Again, fucking great question, man. So I think yes and no. I think the only downside of what happened there was we would have had more access to more people if those other projects had stayed moving the way that they could have. Mm-hmm. With BMX, I love BMX. I still love BMX, but my interest in being involved day to day in the industry changed when I didn't feel like I could offer anything that wasn't already out there.
Right.
I never wanted to contribute the same thing to BMX. I wanted to contribute different things.
Right.
So I liked how our brands looked, but I mean, with Coalition, we were independent, man. I mean, like truly independent. I didn't have any money. All the unique products that we made were great, but then we would have had to start making stuff from the catalogs, and we just didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
So we changed direction with that. Hell on Earth was always tiny. That's never made any money anyway.
but the game changed so much in BMX in terms of like, and I mean, it continues to constantly fluctuate. And like, there was a certain era where everybody cared about lightweight and new technology and new ideas for products and stuff. And then that era was essentially replaced by everybody just being like, well, these bikes are fine. And there's no reason for us to try to improve upon these. Yeah. So now if you're a bike company, you're in this really bizarre business of just, it's all pretty much branding based, but even that it's just a strange stew of what is cool or what kids want these days.
It would be hard for me to even comment on that. I truly love watching it as a spectator. You know what I mean? I'll always look critically at products and branding and stuff like that. But I mean, as you said, it changed so dramatically, so quickly. It's like looking at something in a different era. Right. It's the same thing with riding itself. I mean, I look at the hardest things done, 6 or 7 years ago.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that now it's like people are doing that on the way to the 7-Eleven to get a Slurpee before they go riding.
Yeah. People's bangers are now like just stuff you see young kids do on Instagram all the time. Like a legitimate like pro level banger from 3-4 years ago is an Instagram clip now. Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's like it's head shakingly impressive, but it's also just.
Yeah. But it's interesting though because a lot of the stuff that you, me, people are into is very youth based. Like you get into hardcore when you're a young kid. You get into BMX when you're a young kid, almost exclusively. You don't find a lot of people who are like 40 and they're like, oh, I just found out about Haybreed and this is what I'm into now, or even rap to a certain extent. It's just people get into it when they're young. Same thing with skateboarding. Same thing with everything. Yep. Are you the kind of guy who's disillusioned by because you look at BMX now versus BMX 20 years ago, or you look at hardcore now. Well, hardcore actually managed to stay almost exactly the same in a lot of ways. But if you were a huge rap fan in the 90s, you'd look at rap now and be like, I do not even. This is almost not recognizable. So do you have that battle of becoming salty? And
that's interesting. It's a good question again. I mean, I guess with hardcore, I'm in a minor league. Love the music, hate the kids phase. But it's really the same with BMX. I don't love it any less than I did when I was a kid. I'm not even just saying that. Like, I think about it all the time. There are records that I listen to that I bought, that I remember when I was maybe 13, 14, 15 years old, that I can play again and still find the same interest and motivation in. And something that's been cool, that's kind of been a weird parallel for me, is through fitness. I've actually got to meet some people that when I was a kid I looked up to from hardcore. Gavin Van Black from Absolution and Burn is my primary example right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, the other day I got to hear one of the new tracks that Burn put together. You know, that's a band that I listened to. Absolution is a band that I listened to when I was just a very young kid. You know,
Burn has new songs now.
Yeah, they're not out yet, but they're coming.
Crazy.
And you know,
Burn was an old ass band when I was a kid, and
Yeah.
they had been broken up forever. I didn't even know they were making new stuff. That's crazy.
And it's I mean, it's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and so the fact that, you know, from fitness, and he competed in Muay Thai and was one of the people that very thankfully that I looked up to in hardcore, as hardcore as more than just looking like a tough guy. You know, like these were guys that were putting their money where their mouth is, and adding physicality to that philosophy. I love that.
Right.
That's what motivated me to get into martial arts when I was a kid. So I guess there's no less love for hardcore or anything like that. I watch some of the nonsense that kids do, and I watch a lot of the posturing and stuff, and I can kind of shake my head at that differently than I could. I mean, 10 or 15 years ago, I may have taken it a little bit too seriously.
Yeah.
Now I can really just kind of shake my head at it. We attempted running back to Rochester.
But all these hardcore kids have guns now.
Yeah,
not all of them, but I hear about shit, and I'm like, man, you guys really got serious out there.
Yeah, you know, and it's serious in quotes. You know, I mean,
right.
A lot of this is just nerdery that's just gone a little wrong.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, it's definitely that too.
We attempted to do some Hell on Earth shows since I'd moved back to Rochester. All of them ended in full-scale police-style riots.
Right.
And it was only because kids come there and they're just there to fight anyone.
Right.
You know, and one thing that I loved about hardcore, and you know, I guess at its core I still do love, is fighting anything but each other.
Right.
You know, so for us, I mean, we were super unforgiving about any of that, and you know, anyone that knows us knows that, you know, if we put on a Hell on Earth show and you come there to cause trouble, we're always going to be better at it than you are.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so we just stopped doing any of that because we just want to watch it. You know?
Yeah.
We just want to see good bands play, and
if you put on hardcore shows for a living, you're a fucking martyr, because there's so many things that could go wrong.
When we were kids, man, I think we learned every single one of them.
Yeah.
We Rochester in that era of, you know, I guess I would consider it like early on hardcore. We were fortunate enough. When I say we, I guess I mean I. We were fortunate enough to put on some of the standout shows ever in that city. Our friend Eric Warner was one of the other guys that put them on, and it all happened. I mean, it was we got to see it firsthand. You know, anything crazy that people thought about that era of hardcore was real.
Yeah.
The crowds were not homogenized. You know, the skinheads fought with the metalheads that fought with the hardcore kids. Sometimes they would bring weapons, sometimes they wouldn't. The cops would come. The clubs would try and not pay you. The bands would try and steal your money. I mean, it was a cool experience. But at the time, I mean, I remember being scared to death. You know, one of my best stories though from that era was Integrity, a band that a lot of people are familiar with. I wanted to bring them to Rochester so bad, so we booked them, and everybody was like, Integrity is going to steal your money. They're going to screw you.
They had that rep at the time?
They did bad,
okay.
You know. And I was like, I don't care, man. I was dealing with the guitarist Chris Smith, and their van broke, and it was time for me to wire transfer them, Western Union them money to get a rental car to come to Rochester. Everybody's like, "Are you crazy? They're lying. There's no show." So I said, "We're going to do it." So I sent them essentially all my money. I think I was probably 16 at the time. Western Union and the money. The van had actually broken. They rented a car. The dude that I was working with to book the show didn't even wasn't even able to come. It was like a compact car.
Right.
They come to Rochester, kill it. The club owner tries to not pay us the money, which means they don't get paid, which means I don't get my money back.
Right.
So the Melnicks, the guitar and bass player at the time, dealt with the club owner. Now, when I say dealt with, I mean dealt with.
Right.
You know,
He made sure you got paid back?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. They paid us back. They got the money from the club. Gave me some money for pizza. You know, it was like you know, fucking Santa Claus was real for that day.
Yeah, you must have been sold on hardcore for life right there.
It was amazing. It's amazing. You know, I mean, the flip side of that is, you know, the next time we booked a show, it overdrew. We made a little extra money, and the club owner in the basement of the club tried to extort me for an extra $300 with a leather glove with spikes on it.
Really?
You know, yeah, there's a club called The Abyss in Rochester, and the fucking nerd that owned that club took me in the basement and tried to get more money, and he had a leather glove with some spikes on it.
Right.
I reminded him quickly that there were 300 people upstairs that will destroy his club if he does anything to me. He hadn't thought about that yet.
What are you going to do? You're going to punch through my face? You're going to kill me with that glove? Like, I don't, you know, you're going to have to kill me because I go upstairs and tell fucking anybody what just happened. You're going to be in a lot of trouble, yeah.
That's right. So I mean, and even just talking about it now, I mean, I love hardcore for where it took me for sure. And we even just touched on this. Experience from these weird underground cultures and independent cultures teach you so much about the utility of performing at a higher level.
Right.
You know, I'm infinitely patient with training people because what's going to happen? You know, we're going to fix that movement. If it takes me 3 fucking hours, I'm going to fix it because there's no way that's harder than anything I've ever done before.
Right.
You know? So anyway, yeah, I think that's where we are with hardcore in Rochester.
That's Rochester. Is Rochester, at this point in time, give us your honest analysis, is this a real fucked up place? I would imagine that there's fucking heroin addicts roaming the streets. You got all kind of, the East Coast is crazy. Like any random city, there's just so much fucked up shit going on.
I mean, I don't see it as you know, it's not like a they live situation yet out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I don't think it's the shining beacon of the East Coast, but it could be worse. It could be worse. Am I jinxing myself here?
I don't know. I mean, anything could be worse.
You know, realistically, I'm a pretty private person. Rochester doesn't really impact me as much right now because we could really be anywhere. I'm just kind of locked down and working on building this brand and getting really, really good at training people and training myself and disseminating information. You know, although we're like weird underground kids, the strength and conditioning information we have and the details that we employ are really just second to none.
Right.
I say that with humility, but also with a ton of experience.
When you look at other cities all over the country and stuff, would you say that, like, could you be dropped off in any random city and find a gym that you like the way that they were doing things, or is it kind of a rare landscape for you?
Man, no, I could not. I'm sure I could find somewhere to train and people that I respect and enjoy, but it's harder to find great ones than it is mediocre ones, and it's way easier to find any of those, or it's way harder to find any of those than it is to find poor ones.
Right.
So there's a ton of great gyms. There's a ton of great coaches. It's tough to find generalists that are focused on details.
Right.
And that's not to say that you're not going to go to a city and find a really, really excellent powerlifting gym. Or a really, really excellent kickboxing gym or something like that. But the hybridization of it is just CrossFit right now.
Right.
There's a few other places that do it. What I think is just really exceptionally, but it's definitely the exception, not the rule.
Right.
Yeah.
What about if you were, because like when I did jiu-jitsu for like a year, and I thought those were some of the craziest workouts I've ever had in terms of just how I felt after my whole body just being like completely destroyed, and I really thought that was pretty amazing. When you look at just martial arts, if somebody were to just be using that as their primary workout protocol, would you say that that's a good idea, or is it a bad idea? Are there a lot of things that kind of get left behind in that?
Wrestling and grappling conditioning is the hardest of anything. Nothing taxes you like that.
Every muscle in your body just craning to keep someone from killing you is a good workout. Yeah.
Well, but then the snake eats its tail there, in the sense that a lot of the details and a lot of the kettlebell lifting and a lot of the mace stuff that we do insulates grappling and kickboxing and wrestling conditioning. One of the things that we did a lot of at Long Beach, and we do a lot of at Wolf Brigade, is just doing one thing and then doing the other. Mm-hmm. So if you're transferring from a quick bout of some sensible strength and conditioning into a round of wrestling or a round of kicking on the bag or something like that, that's valuable to us. Short bursts of power that mimic what you're trying to do in sport makes sense. So yeah, I mean, like grappling style conditioning, grappling rounds, the hardest conditioning out there. That being said, you can improve your conditioning for that up to a certain point with intelligent strength and conditioning stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that the kettlebells and the maces are the most transferable modalities.
Yeah, so what is special about kettlebells? And I haven't really heard anybody talk about the mace thing besides you so much. I know kettlebells are pretty popular in a lot of walks of life now, but what is so much better about kettlebells than dumbbells, and also with the mace thing? Like, where does that come in?
Yeah, so kettlebell, for us, it's a great tool because it lets you train one side or both sides differently than a barbell. So from one rep max style strength, barbell is always going to be the king of implements for sure.
Right.
But if you're not insulating that strength with other stuff, there's going to be a hole in the boat. So we use kettlebells for a lot of power stuff. We use kettlebells for positional diagnostics. Because of injuries, my front rack with a barbell is terrible, always has been. So I always struggled to lift in the front as heavy as I wanted to. So I worked really hard to get details of how to lift kettlebells heavy.
Right.
So at this point now, 10 plus years into that, we're able to put those details on people, and we've got people that lift really, really heavy kettlebells safely, and that's kind of unique. Tons and tons of people lift kettlebells. Not very many of them lift kettlebells heavy. And then a lot of real strength athletes dismiss them because they don't think they can lift them heavy. But it's not that they can't. It's just that they're not employing the details.
And what's the value of a kettlebell is essentially that it's better for like balance and building overall muscle, whereas like when you're using a barbell, it's more rigid and you're following a straight path.
They're both valuable. They both help each other improve. The kettlebell wants to rotate differently.
Right.
It's way less cooperative. It wants to move a lot more linear. It wants to move a lot more lateral, and the barbell wants to move a lot more linear. And both are important, especially if you're transferring it to sport. I mean, if you're talking about something like grappling. Grappling does not move straight forward and back ever.
Right.
So the value of kettlebells is just versatility, but not novelty. Right. So a lot of kettlebells get lifted in a novelty fashion. That's not really going to make anyone very much stronger.
Right, like just doing curls with it, basically.
Wacky shit with no real why.
Right.
We want to know why. And then with the mace, that's a tool that we got turned on to early on, 2005 or so. And I just loved. I mean, Indian wrestling has used maces for hundreds of years as their primary strength and conditioning tool. It made it over here, in the early 2000s in a little more prominent way. I'm sure it was here before that. Everything's here earlier than we think it is. But when I learned about it, I saw immediately that there were details and weights that hadn't been addressed yet. Mm-hmm. But how good it made my shoulders feel and how brutal it was told me that it needed some retooling. So we've worked hard on that, and now we have really like normal people wielding these really scary maces and developing way stronger shoulders, rotational stability that transfers to all this barbell lifting.
Right.
So we think about a lot of this stuff as just insulating what you want to do best.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? If what you want to do is deadlift 500 pounds, you have to do more than just deadlift.
Right.
If what you want to do is be a world champion at jiu-jitsu, ultimately you have to do a shitload of jiu-jitsu, but you also have to insulate that with other things.
Right. Because at the end of the day, strength is a big part of any martial art, and you're not going to build maximum strength by just doing that martial art.
Well, yeah, and mobility,
Right.
and positional awareness, and this like a elusive midline stability that like this buzzword in fitness, but that is very often kind of, I guess, misconstrued as just the ability to lift something heavy.
Right.
The mace, the length of the lever, and even the fact that it rotates, side to side in such a violent, vicious way, really teaches us a lot of things that no other tool can teach us. So anyway, we use that, and we found a ton of value in that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's the cool thing is this evolutionary process I've seen happen in a couple different industries now. So I felt the same way about BMX, and I feel the same way about like watching it as a spectator now.
Right.
Things with the kettlebell and the mace, we're very fortunate, in my opinion, to be at the front of that evolutionary process now.
Right. That's cool. Do you still keep up on like MMA a lot? Still watch it and really enjoy it?
I mean, I love watching fighting. I shake my head. I look at fighting, even though on a very minor level I've competed in kickboxing and grappling. They're like superhumans, man.
Oh,
it's like
totally. Yeah.
It's like I look at BMX now.
It's nice to be an older guy who's looking at all these younger guys like, man, you are so much better than anything I ever considered doing with this.
It's just brutal. It's just truly amazing. Both the skill level and the durability.
Conor McGregor.
Yeah, that's funny.
You watch him this weekend?
It's funny. Yeah, I got it.
Fucked, man.
The other day. It's nuts.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, there can be no naysaying about the skill level. You can take or leave the theatrics and stuff like that, but I mean, when someone moves great and has full control of such a time bomb of a process, like a fight, man, you gotta pat him on the back.
He's fascinating. It just keeps getting worse or just more and more fascinating. And like I feel like every time I look at his Instagram, he's got 1 million more followers. It's insane how much people love him. Like, and he just lives up to it constantly. It's like I almost wonder if the enormity of his superstar is going to make it so is that going to negatively affect him? Like, is he going to lose the hunger to keep beating the shit out of people when he's already accomplished almost everything that he could accomplish?
And you just said it, man. It's even if he were to quit and disappear today, he's already made an indelible mark. But at the same time, too, what do I know? We're sitting here in a weird office, but he doesn't seem like someone that's driven as much by, obviously he's driven by fame and money, but I also feel that he's just driven by something deeper than that.
Yeah.
Like, he just looks like he loves to fucking fight. You can't fake that.
Yeah. The problem is that he's realizing how much power he has over the UFC because they've never had a star as big as him before. So I feel when he was doing the post-fight interview and he's saying like, I want a part of the company. Well, he's probably right that he probably does deserve that to some extent. But are they going to allow him to take? I don't know. Is
this where I admit that I mute all?
Oh, really?
not even just from him, but from anyone.
Yeah.
I like to like the fighters, and sometimes in post-fight interviews, you're just like, homie.
I don't pay attention to that many post-fight interviews because it's always some guy in Brazilian with a fucking interpreter or whatever. But when it's Conor, it's like I know it's going to be something hilarious. Hey, I wanted to ask about this too. Is that you're still married to the straight edge? Just for the record. The straight edge with all caps or not or capitalized.
The involuntary.
Nate Richter is involuntary straight edge because he's anemic.
I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't smoke any pot, anything like that. I mean, I don't call it straight edge.
You don't X up. That would be fire if you walked in here with big X's on your hands.
That would be amazing. I think at this point now I have to do it at some point for novelty only.
I wish I could get away with that.
I really just. Man, to be completely honest, I'm just really taking seriously trying to train as much and as hard as I possibly can for myself. I know I can beat myself down in training if I want to. Now I want to get as strong and flexible and skilled as I possibly can, because I want to be able to put all those details on others. And the way I look at it is all of that starts with what I eat and what I don't eat, and how I sleep and all that kind of stuff. So for the last, since 2012 with that surgery, I've really just had to lock it down and make a decision that I'm not going to leave any of that to chance or circumstance or anything like that.
You're planning on being a really hip, in shape 70-year-old. I'm assuming that you're like, you picture yourself at 70 as moving pretty well. You think?
Is this when I casually admit that I don't think there's any fucking way that I'll be alive at 70?
Yeah, but we all used to say that when we were kids. Like, I can't imagine being 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
70 is tough to imagine. Or it's just, Donald Trump's 70. So if you have that much energy, there you go. You're preparing. I doubt he works out as hard as you.
Oh my God.
That's a real. You could throw the word Donald Trump at this point in any podcast, and it just could take a wild detour.
That's right, especially when it comes to like relating his training to mine.
His training, yeah, particularly.
That is not where I thought we were going to go right now.
Well, that's the question. He's got so much press with him all the time now, and he's going on vacation. Are we going to do we get to see him with no shirt on at any point? Because I would like to know what that looks like.
Is this where I casually admit that I literally live in a bubble?
Yeah.
And I had no idea about anything you just said.
You don't know that Donald Trump is president?
No, I do know that. Yeah, there was a lot of man, what are we going to call it? Misguided emotion in my area.
Yeah. Oh, enthusiasm, I would say. Yeah.
Enthusiasm, sure, yeah, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I knew that had transpired, but the rest of it, I'm just trying to keep the blinders on a little bit. What are you going to do? Look at all that?
If you were born in a different era, you think you would have gone with like being a monk or something? You seem very like satisfied with like solitary.
And some of these questions, it makes me think you've been talking to my brother. Like these are good questions. So my brother and I talk a lot about the fact that we thought that we would like to have been born in like the Little House on the Prairie era.
Right.
Like end of the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s. And I've made
because one of slaves or
Jesus. No, man.
Sorry.
Just kind of like the simplicity and integrity of that era.
Right.
Like everybody was still cool and it looked like they enjoyed life, but they stuck up for each other, man. And if someone did you wrong, you punched them in the face and it was over. If you bought something, you paid for it. If you wanted something, you worked for it. I've posted several times that I think a perfect mix of reality and fiction would be Lone Wolf and Cub and Little House on the Prairie. Mm-hmm. You mix those two things together, you've got pretty much everything you need to know.
Fair enough. I could see you being like a guy who lives like on some sort of ranch or like a farm or something. For some reason, it seems like it would be like a happy place for you.
I would have to learn a lot. Like one thing I am not is that like independent, resourceful flannel man.
Right.
I know I can get there.
You couldn't you're not a handyman around the house or anything.
I mean, I can read and I'm moderately intelligent, so I can figure stuff out. But it's just not. It's not my current skill set. I guess. In the same way that I'm sure I could fix my car if I needed to. But there are people smarter than me that do it better, so that's that.
Specialization's big.
Yeah, specialization.
I feel like if you live on a farm for a while, you're going to end up learning all kinds of stuff that you would never even consider learning.
Of course. It's the same with anything.
Real resourceful.
It's the same. I think about that idea a lot. The peripherals of what we're focusing on, not just the actual target of what we're focusing on.
Right.
And not to bring everything back to fitness, but I think that's one of the things that we do the most differently is how we articulate details. Mm-hmm. It's not even that we know the details or that we've seen them. It's if we can articulate them in a way that makes sense to someone that's coming to see us or someone that reaches us 3,020 million miles away on the internet. Mm. I think that's kind of where we hit a different mark than a lot of people.
That's dope. Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying with like, there's a lot of peripheral benefits that you get from anything that you're doing or benefits or harm that is caused by it, and it's important to
sure. And there's ways to think about things. A lot of the things that we do that resonate more than the movements is a lot of the philosophical stuff. I mean, on that Wolf Brigade site and on our Instagram, there's a lot of simple, thoughtful stuff on there that we get more touchbacks on than a lot of the physical videos. Mm-hmm. Just because people haven't thought about that stuff, and really people struggle more mentally than physically. So that's something that we find is pretty crucial to address. Is if your mind isn't right, you're either not going to work hard or you're not going to enjoy working hard.
Mm-hmm.
So one without the other is like it's a half-empty glass.
It makes sense. So we're over an hour in here. I want to talk about the Wolf Brigade site and what can people find there? How would you describe it for anybody who's interested in what you have to offer at this point?
Thank you. Yeah, man. So wolfbrigade.com, and then Instagram is Wolf Brigade Gym. There's 6+ years of detailed daily training. If people really wanted to go on there and pick a month and just start training, just follow it in order and you'll get some excellent, intelligent training. If you don't know the movements, don't guess. Find someone that knows or contact us or something like that. Also on the site is hundreds of articles. Some of them are longer, some of them are shorter. Some of them are really about fitness. Others are just about mindset, philosophy. I've written a bunch of stuff about when I was a kid. Some of the stories that we just shared are probably touched on in there somewhere. Lots of video links, all that kind of stuff. Links to a book I wrote.
Yeah, I was going to say the book is like. Yeah. I feel like it would be a real fault if I didn't bring that up.
Yeah, that's linked on there now. I've had a blog called War of Attrition since 1999. It's nonfiction stories about crazy shit that's happened to me, mostly in Rochester. In 2008, I started writing a novel, and took a break in 2009 because it was a fucking disaster, and finished it, and now it's out. It's called Theft of the Age. And it's just about some maladjusted kids in high school.
And the book is nonfiction as well?
No, the book is fiction.
The book is fiction. But is it fictionalized versions of events that really happened to you?
These kids do some pretty crazy stuff to people that I never did.
Right.
But I mean, of course, most things are semi-autobiographical. Things that those kids are thinking and ways they're killing their time are things that I would have done when I was younger.
Right. I've thought about that. If I were to write like a fictionalized account of someone who's like me's life, and if I were to sort of encompass all the fucked up shit that I know of people having done, whether it was crime or just fucked up things that occurred or whatever, it would be jarring.
Yeah. It
could be really good. But
yeah. And
fiction's very interesting.
That's where a lot of the greatest motivation comes from. And in my opinion, I'm sure someone that sits at home and watches a lot of TV could have written a similar book to the one that I wrote, but it wouldn't have resonated with someone like me.
Right.
I want to know where someone came from, and I want to know that the story they're telling me, even if it's a fictionalized story, is something that they can somewhat relate to.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of the reason that this is appealing to people is I'm very vettable. Anything I've ever said or any story I've ever told is I have receipts. And some of the fucking receipts I wish I did not have.
Yeah.
But this is volume 1 of the book. There's volume 2 and there will be volume 3, and it centers on a girl and then secondarily a boy. But it's not like a young adult fiction. It's like human condition fiction.
Right.
These are people that grew up in their minds a lot earlier than most people do. Similar to how I did. Similar to how I imagine you did. So yeah.
Let's go.
Anyway, that's that.
Well, hey, it was awesome to get this fucking interview done. The BMX crowd will appreciate it. I think that a lot of people who are just interested in fitness or hardcore or anything that I throw in the description to try to get them to watch it will be hyped on it. I'm really fucking glad that we got this done.
I appreciate it too, man. And while I've got a live mic to say congratulations on this.
Thank you.
Transcending BMX, as we just talked about, is not an easy task. To do it organically is even less easy. So I wanted to compliment that.
I appreciate it. It's been a weird journey.
That's it. That's a good closer. It's been a weird journey.
A weird little trip here.
That's for sure.
Well, hey, so Greg Walsh, Wolf Brigade is the Instagram and everything. Wolfbrigade.com is the website. So anybody who's interested, make sure to check that out and keep up to date on what he's got going on. And if you're in Rochester and you want to fucking get the shit kicked out of you,
in the most intelligent way possible.
Right, in a way that will ultimately benefit you.
That's right.
Come see my man, Greg. Thank you
right.
very much, Greg.
Thank
and
you,
to
guys.
anybody watching this, please subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes. You can listen to us in your car. You can watch it on YouTube. You can do whatever the hell you want. Thank you much, Greg.
Thank you.
That was awesome, man. That's a great fucking question. Yeah? I'm telling you. It's like we were talking to my brother. Some of the stuff I was like,
Really?
yeah, yes.
That's funny. I don't really write stuff down really too much.
It's conversations that like especially to think like what era would you be born in?
Right.
We talk about that. My brother and I talk about that every month. Every month someone does something like youth culture-y.
Yeah.
Pisses us off.